no is a complete sentence. Your boundaries are for you and for you only. I am a former people pleaser. You deserve to prioritize your peace, your happiness. Hi, my name is Anissa. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be talking about how to set boundaries and protect your energy. It's the holiday season, so with that, it comes a lot of time spent with family, with friends, and sometimes things can happen to where boundaries are being crossed, maybe intentionally or not intentionally. But in this video, I want to break down how to set those clear boundaries for yourself. That way we can live a peaceful life for ourselves and get clear on what it is that is, okay versus not okay for us. Without further ado, let's get right into today's video. First, let's talk about what boundaries actually are. Boundaries, I feel like, is that thin line between what is okay versus what's not okay for you. When it comes to boundaries, it really helps you prioritize what you need for your overall well-being, to feel safe and to feel at peace. So being able to really identify those boundaries for yourself is going to be beneficial when it comes to your relationship with yourself, with other people, with work, with your side hustles. When it comes to boundaries, setting them isn't about pushing people away. It's about really advocating for yourself, so that way you can show up to be your best self in every aspect. So how do you know if you need better boundaries? I'm going to give you guys a few telltale signs that show you that you don't have clear enough boundaries. One would be you constantly feel drained or overwhelmed. You tend to people please and put other people's needs above your own. You say yes to everything out of obligation or not even actual desire, or you feel just resentful when it comes to certain relationships or situations because you weren't aware of speaking up for yourself in that particular boundary. So the first thing to do when it comes to setting your boundaries is to clearly identify those boundaries and also understand that your boundaries are for you and for you only. It's not a means to push people away or make people feel like you're, being mean. It's strictly for you. I think people tend to get in their head that if they're expressing a boundary, they come off as being mean or pushing people away, but that's not the case. Like I said, boundaries are for you, and it's for you to understand what makes you feel safe and what makes you feel grounded in certain situations. So when it comes to boundaries and expressing those, it's up to you to uphold those boundaries. Whether people respect those boundaries or not for you, that's their decision. But then at the same time, you also have that decision to decide whether you want to keep that person in your life or if you want to change the relationship in a way that's going to best fit your needs. Also, just being able to clearly define what your boundary is. I feel like a lot of people kind of go throughout life being triggered or feeling a certain way without really knowing the reason why they feel a certain way. So I think taking that time to really know yourself deeply enough to know, okay, like this makes me uncomfortable, this does not. This makes me uncomfortable, this does not. So it's like figuring out for yourself what to the T makes you feel like low in energy in that sense, and then tailoring and identifying your boundary to assist that. Something that I do for myself is that I have a book when it comes to my non-negotiables for myself and my boundaries. So it's like boundaries for myself, it's boundaries for friendships, for dating, for work. It's like even content creation I have boundaries for because I know it makes me feel the most productive and most myself. For example, like a boundary that I have for myself when it comes to content creation is I don't have any notifications on my phone. If I do have them on my phone, I'm more likely to scroll more and spend more time on it or see like who liked my video, like how many subscribers do I have now. I tend to spend a lot more time on the apps than I need to be on there. I get fixated on the numbers versus just creating the content that I want to create. So a boundary that I have for myself is that, okay, I need to take the notifications off my phone and only check in maybe like once every other day to like respond to comments, respond to whatever it is, right? Another boundary can be for work. If you know in your contract and in your responsibilities that you're working till 5 p.m., but your boss is demanding you to work longer hours without pay. They're demanding you so many expectations, but you're not getting paid for it. A boundary that you can have for yourself is like, hey, no, it's 5 p.m., I'm leaving, I'm clocked out, and that's it, because once you stand on that boundary and express that to your boss, they're not going to expect you to perform more than what you express what your boundary is in the beginning, right? So again, just having that list written down is very helpful. When it comes to like certain situations, it's easy for us to also get emotional when our boundaries are being crossed and we're being triggered. Having a list for yourself kind of helps you get back to the facts and kind of helps you remain logical in a sense of what you've written down. Like if you know for yourself, you cannot have friendships that are competitive and you feel like a friendship that you just had is starting to become that, you know that you've been down this road before. You don't want to go down this path anymore. So it's like, okay, I can't deal with having a friend who wants to compete with me or whatever. So it's like, okay, I need to take a step back from this friendship because that's a boundary that I don't want to be crossed, if that makes sense. Or you get triggered when someone speaks to you in a certain tone or a certain way. It's like, okay, I know that I need to be communicated with in this fact and in this manner because maybe childhood trauma, like have it written down and clearly identify those boundaries for yourself. That way you're able to know what it is for yourself and you can take that next step, which is to communicate those boundaries to anyone outside of you. The next thing to do to set your boundaries and protect your peace is to clearly communicate your boundaries. This relates to things more so outside of you. So when it comes to like friendships, relationships, things like that. When it comes to expressing your boundaries as well too and communicating those boundaries, I feel like it's always best to remain calm and communicate that in a respectful tone. One thing my therapist taught me a few years back is to use I statements versus you statements, because when you express a boundary to someone, maybe a friend or a partner, and you use the word you, it's making the boundary more so about that person versus it being about you. When you tend to do that, it's easy for that person to become triggered and to become defensive because they're like, oh, you're doing this, you're doing that. And it's like, it's not really about that person. It's like, yes, this person may have crossed that boundary, but were they, aware of it? So it's like really taking that time to express your boundary of like, hey, I feel uncomfortable when X, Y, Z. Like, this makes me uncomfortable. So putting the intention really on that particular thing, that particular subject or that thing is going to be a lot more helpful to get that boundary communicated clearly to the other person so they see, oh, that thing makes her uncomfortable. That thing makes him uncomfortable. I'm not going to do that thing anymore, X, Y, and Z, right? So always just expressing your boundary in a way that it's the boundary itself versus not putting it onto another person. And if you have an issue with, a friend who is overstepping your boundary and you clearly communicated to that friend about your boundary and they still decide to overstep it, then the ball is completely in your court to decide whether you want to continue that friendship or not, or you want to create distance between you and that friend. But once you have that clear understanding of the boundary and that they're not really respecting it, then you can actually move forward with a decision of, okay, I don't feel comfortable here. I don't feel safe here. So in order for me to feel safe and feel protected and protect my energy, I need to separate myself from this person. It's about you showing up for yourself and your needs. The next thing to do when it comes to setting your boundaries and protecting your peace is to be consistent. So this is like the biggest thing, honestly, when it comes to setting boundaries, because you have to be able to withhold those boundaries, right? Because if you communicate to someone that something makes you uncomfortable and maybe they forgot or, some things happen and you allow them to kind of set that boundary, they're going to think it's okay to continue walking over you because you're not taking yourself seriously enough to withhold that boundary, right? So it's like, people treat you the way that you treat yourself. So it's all about really having that self-respect enough to value and stand 10 toes behind what you said your boundary was. So it means standing on business.
Ain't no hold on, you hold on. Then I hung up. Oh, I'm standing on business.
It means when one person crosses you once, they have that one chance to cross that boundary if they didn't know. But once you express that boundary and you allow them to constantly repeat crossing your boundaries, then you're teaching them how to treat you, right? So it's like when it comes to boundaries and really upholding them, you have to be consistent. Like you have to really hone in on what it is. Like for your job, if your manager is trying to get you to do more work and take advantage of you, if you kind of allow them to keep, selling you short and keep using you for your labor and skills without being paid in advance or whatever, of, hey, maybe I have a family back home I have to take care of, I can't stay long hours, or hey, I have this thing that I'm going to after work, or hey, like if you don't speak up for yourself, no one's going to speak up for you. Even though they said that they don't really, have the bandwidth to do this project or whatever, but you're still allowing them to. So you're like, oh, well, it would only happen this one time. I can promise you it won't, because again, they're going to see that you're easily manipulated to where they're going to keep pushing you to do work. And also I want to clarify that boundaries can be set at any time. Even if in the past, maybe you allowed someone to cross your boundary multiple times, it's never too late to decide today is a different day. And today, from this point on, this boundary will be respected. Because when it comes to boundaries, it's all about setting that standard for yourself. It doesn't matter what was allowed in the past. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. If you decide from this point on and you stick to it with being consistent, That's all that matters, right? So again, just having that self-love and self-respect enough for yourself to advocate for yourself in these personal settings. So that way you can prioritize yourself and what you need for yourself to feel your best. The last thing to do to set your boundaries and protect your peace is to let go of guilt. This can be very difficult when it comes to being a people pleaser. Trust me, I am a former people pleaser, so I understand this logic, but understanding that boundaries aren't a punishment for anyone, it's just for yourself. It's just holding that self-respect to know that you can't really pour from an empty cup. And when it comes to just life in general, no one's gonna show up for you the way that you show up for yourself. So it's yeah, you can pour into all these different people and really give so much of yourself, but it's are you getting that same energy back? If you are, then great, but if not, you really have to be that person for yourself to fill up your own cup, fill up your own needs, and really take care of yourself first before you can really help anybody else. No is a complete sentence, okay? Remember that you deserve to prioritize your peace, your happiness. So it's really our responsibility to create that space for ourselves. That way we can be in environments that make us feel safe, make us feel protected, make us feel supported. That way we can show up as our best selves. And that's it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys for another video next week. Bye.